Welcome to a brand new episode of the Jampack Report today for February the 5th of 2020. Of course, my name is Samuel Adams, and this is a daily gaming news podcast meant to bring you the hottest news that you need to know from around the industry. Hosted on YouTube and podcast services around the world 5 days a week, the Jampack Report is your one-stop shop for all of the big news that you need to know. But today, we're talking about Xbox boss Phil Spencer and a statement he has made saying that Sony is not their direct competition going forward. I have some thoughts on that, but he also has a point, so it could be an interesting next few years. Then we're talking more about the brand new Batman Arkham game that has long been teased. Unfortunately, nothing concrete to report today, but still some stuff worth talking about according to a new report. Then we'll talk more about Apex Legends, Fallout 76, the new games coming to Xbox Game Pass, and finally, for those still playing Fortnite, you've got some Harley Quinn coming your way. And this is the stuff of 12-year-old wet dreams. Let's be very blunt about what we're seeing here today. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's top gaming news. First off, Xbox boss Phil Spencer does not see Sony as competition going forward. Enthusiast forums may be focused on the ongoing battle between Sony and Microsoft, but Xbox boss Phil Spencer sees Amazon and Google as its big competitors moving forward. The talkative executive dropped the soundbite during an interview with Protocol in which he dismissed PlayStation's ability to implement a cloud-based infrastructure on par with the Redmond firm's Azure setup. Quote, "When you talk about Nintendo and Sony, we have a ton of respect for them, but we see Amazon and Google as the main competitors going forward," he said. That's not to disrespect Nintendo and Sony, but the traditional gaming companies are somewhat out of position. I guess they could try to recreate Azure, but we've invested tens of billions of dollars in cloud over the years, end quote. Sony, of course, has signed a strategic partnership with Microsoft to leverage its servers and further develop cloud-based gaming solutions. Up until the introduction of Google Stadia last year, PlayStation Now was the only streaming option on the market. Spencer, regardless, is thinking bigger than the traditional console wars. He continued, "I don't want to be in a fight over format wars with Nintendo and Sony, while Amazon and Google are focusing on how to get gaming to 7 billion people around the world. Ultimately, that's the goal. One step at a time, Phil. One step at a time." Now, this is an incredibly interesting move for Phil Spencer to take, and a very interesting statement for him to make because, of course, traditionally, it has been Xbox versus PlayStation. That's how it's always been, and a lot of people assumed that's how it always would be. But his approach is not entirely off base. I think that he could be on target, but it's almost like taking a bet. It's almost like saying, hey, go ahead and put me, put these chips on that. I'm trying to make a roulette remark, like you play in the casinos, but it's not working out. I don't gamble. He's gambling, essentially. What I'm trying to say here is that Phil Spencer is gambling because let's say that the next console generation pretty much shapes up exactly the same way that we saw this previous console generation. Needless to say, Sony is your direct competitor. Nintendo is your direct competitor. And so if you are completely and totally focusing on Amazon and Google as your main competition, well, then you're probably going to get left out in the cold if that is in fact the scenario. However, let's say that Phil Spencer and the team at Microsoft are seeing into the future in a way, shape, or form, and they see cloud gaming beginning to take over. They are well ahead of the curve, and they are going to be ahead of Sony and Nintendo in the long run if that is the case. So that's kind of the route that I see them going. Now, I do want to say, I think that Phil Spencer is making this statement to try and push the future of cloud gaming and try and push that technology into faster development, but I would never bet that Xbox is saying PlayStation is no longer a threat, because that's always going to be competition, at least for the next console generation. When you have two consoles that are being compared in the media, when you have two consoles that are going to be hypothetically pretty close in specs, that's direct competition, whether you like it or not. Now, the accessibility, the abilities of the consoles themselves, that's all up for debate, and that could kind of complicate the competition between the two companies, and it could put one in a different tier as compared to another, but it's still going to be competition at the end of the day. So Phil Spencer might be getting ahead of himself here, but it's interesting to see that Microsoft is going all in and actually considering Google to be a legitimate threat, or at least legitimate competition with their Stadia platform, which personally I don't see lasting for more than a year at this point. So there's that. But interesting comments nonetheless from the Xbox head. However, we have been talking about the brand new Batman Arkham game for a good while now. Of course, the teases have been coming from Warner Bros. Montreal since towards the end of 2019, but now we have a new report saying that the next Batman Arkham game is set to kick off a shared DC Games universe. Ooh. Warner Bros. Montreal's long-teased DC game is apparently a soft reboot of Rocksteady's Batman Arkham franchise and releasing later this year, according to a new report from Geeks Worldwide. Citing multiple anonymous sources, the article states that the upcoming title will, quote, kick off a new, somewhat cohesive DC game universe before Rocksteady's own next-gen title, which we already know is using the DC license thanks to job listings on the studio's website, takes the reins from Warner Bros. Montreal's hands. In addition, Geeks Worldwide reconfirms, it's a bit of a tongue twister, reports that Warner Bros. Interactive Entertainment has been trying to get a new Superman game off the ground for some time, and a next-gen project based on the Man of Steel's adventures is also in the works at an undisclosed studio. Details on the story, setting, and nature of any of these games, however, remains a mystery, though the report does suggest that Warner Bros. Montreal's project will feature a playable Bat family and the introduction of co-op. Indeed, the studio's own annoyingly infrequent teases heavily point to a plot inspired by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo's Court of Owls comic book run. While this report is doubling down on leaks and rumors we have seen before, lending a slightly greater air of legitimacy, it is important to remember that until official confirmation from Warner Bros., it's fair to have a degree of skepticism about the information. While Sony has already pulled out of E3 2020, there is every chance that Warner Bros. Could still be attending, so perhaps we'll hear more official news closer to the timing of the annual Games Expo. Either way, stay tuned to Games Radar and, of course, the Jampack Report for all of the biggest news about the new Batman game when it arrives. So, are these leaks, are these hints, are these reports legitimate? I don't know. It's hard to say. And of course, I know nothing definitively, but if you think about the grand scheme here, would it make sense to implement some kind of DC Games universe? And I think that it could, but you have to understand that as it stands today, there really isn't a Marvel Games universe. Superhero games are traditionally pretty bad. I mean, if you look back at the history of what's come out so far, there's really no standout, amazing superhero game franchise aside from, of course, Insomniac's Spider-Man and the Batman Arkham games. Everything else kind of falls to the wayside. And so to replicate that success, to capture that lightning in a bottle and then redistribute it to multiple franchises within the DC Comics universe, that's something that's going to be a bit difficult, especially considering the abilities of each individual superhero. A Superman game could work, but how do you limit Superman? How do you make that a gamified kind of experience whenever Superman can pretty much do anything? You know, what do you do to make that a fun experience? Because Batman, nothing but a human. He's just got a really cool utility belt and a grappling hook and a couple of batarangs, and you're good to go, but you can still be taken out. So I think that the superheroes within the DC universe could absolutely star in their own games, but it's going to be difficult to nail down exactly how that game plays. But regardless, we are going to be seeing what is next for the future of the Batman Arkham franchise when Warner Bros. Montreal officially reveals more information about the game itself instead of some very cryptic teases, which is all they have said thus far. But let's move on and talk about a game that's already out, because Apex Legends is the next big game to try and crack China's mobile market. EA is partnering with a Chinese company, but that does not guarantee success. During its earnings call last week, EA confirmed that a mobile version of Apex Legends is definitely in development. Executives didn't say when it's expected to launch, but they did mention that they're building the smartphone version with a partner in China. Mobile games and China are two things you are going to hear about a lot as the video game industry heads into 2020. Mobile is the most lucrative and the fastest growing segment in gaming, accounting for 46% of the industry's total revenue last year, according to Newzoo, and it makes sense. Sure, Microsoft has sold 50 million Xbox Ones, and Sony has unloaded 102 million PS4s, while Nintendo has distributed 53 million Switches, but there are an estimated 3.2 billion people with smartphones in the world. In the US and Canada, 80% of children, teens, and adults own a mobile device, and 74% of these folks play games on them at least once a month. However, North America accounts for just 9% of the global smartphone market. China represents 27%, and most of these people play games on their phones. China banned the sale of all foreign video game consoles from 2000 to 2015, cutting its players off from the global marketplace. Without PlayStations, Xboxes, GameCubes, and Wiis, Chinese players were limited to PC and mobile gaming for nearly 2 decades. But today, China has an estimated 604 million mobile gamers. The US has 164 million video game players, period. Which brings us back to Apex Legends. EA is working with a Chinese partner to build and launch the mobile version of its competitive shooter in a move likely designed to ease the game's entry into the Chinese marketplace. However, there is no guarantee this plan will work. Just look at Call of Duty Mobile. Activision partnered with giant Chinese conglomerate Tencent to create and launch Call of Duty Mobile on October 1st, 2019. It was an immediate success. Within its first day, it was the #1 free app in 33 countries, and by the end of its first week, it had been downloaded more than 100 million times, smashing previous mobile records. In its first 2 months, this free game brought in nearly $87 million. However, Call of Duty Mobile is not available in China. Even though Activision partnered with Tencent, it could not get the game past China's regulators. Though the ban of foreign consoles has been lifted, Chinese authorities continue to closely monitor the types of games released in the country. The Communist Party of China censors content based on strict standards of patriotism, violence, and sexuality. They limit the amount of time people can play online games, and they outlaw plenty of titles before they can even come to market. In August 2019, Chinese authorities pushed Devotion, a Taiwanese indie game, completely offline because it contained a joke about Chinese President Xi Jinping and Winnie the Pooh. Nice. These restrictions extend to mobile games too, and no name is too big to be banned. Activision can attest to this fact, and EA might learn the same lesson with mobile versions of Apex Legends. During its financial call last week, EA reported making nearly $1 billion in the 3 months in microtransactions alone, and mobile games are the natural home for this revenue system. For publishers, mobile gaming offers a double whammy of money-making opportunities. More than 3 billion people already own the necessary hardware, and it's a perfect fit for in-app purchases. Big market, big money, can't lose, unless you're trying to sell mobile games in China. So Apex Legends, can it work on the mobile device? Absolutely. I think that if Fortnite can be as big as it is on mobile, and if Call of Duty can be as big as it is on mobile, then Apex Legends should have no problem breaking into the mobile market. Now, mobile gaming isn't necessarily my cup of tea. If I had to choose where to play Apex Legends, definitely not going to be on mobile. The same goes for Call of Duty and even Fortnite. But for a lot of people that are working, for a lot of people that might travel a lot, for a lot of people that might be limited, as the article does say, to where they can actually play their games, mobile is a very enticing opportunity to get in on some of the biggest games that are coming out today. I mean, imagine being a kid who might not come from a well-off family, and money might be tight, but you do have a cell phone. You can play Fortnite, you can play Call of Duty, you can play Apex Legends. If this does come to every country around the world, that's awesome. And so I think that's my approach to this, is that the more people, the merrier. But the Chinese, I should say, mobile market is very hard to get into. And of course, in general, the gaming atmosphere over there is much, much stricter as compared to what we get over here in the States and in other countries around the world. You gotta feel bad for that amount of restriction, that amount of censorship. But that's what happens whenever you get into the China government system. Or the Chinese government system, I should say. However, Fallout 76 is coming to Steam, just in case you wanted to dive in. But it's coming in April with a free update. Fallout 76 famously bypassed Steam when it released in October 2018, instead opting to launch through Bethesda's own launcher. The publisher has now confirmed a release date for Steam, and it's relatively soon. Fallout 76 will debut on Steam on April 7th alongside the free Wastelanders update, which adds NPCs to the game. Bethesda is stocking the Steam store with the base game and the Wastelanders Deluxe Edition. Additionally, Bethesda will sell the game's microtransaction currency, atoms, as well as subscriptions to the Fallout First program, along with the Tricentennial Pack and the Raider and Settler content bundles. More on that below. One important thing to know is that the Atoms and Fallout First memberships for Fallout 76 on Bethesda.net will not transfer to Steam. Atoms do not move between platforms, but Bethesda confirmed that items purchased with Atoms can be shared across Steam and Bethesda.net. And so, new content bundles are coming. Excuse me, had to get ready to read. You have the Raider content bundle, the Settler content bundle, and Fallout 76 launched to a pretty rocky start back in 2018 when it came out in October. But Bethesda has been implementing several large content patches since the game's release in order to address player concerns. Prior to Wastelanders, Fallout 76 saw new quests added in Wild Appalachia and a Battle Royale mode in Nuclear Winter, as well as a challenging team-based raid. In fact, multiple. But in GameSpot's Fallout 76 review, Edmund Tran wrote, Bethesda has stated it intends to continue supporting the game for a long time, but at launch, Fallout 76 is a poor experience. There are echoes of the series' admirable qualities, but look past that facade, past the cute Vault Boy animations, past the familiar radio tracks, and you'll find no heart, just an inconsequential wasteland doomed to be nuked over and over again. This is a game that has been through the ringer, let me tell you right now. But the one thing to remember with Fallout 76 is that although the overwhelming majority of gamers are like, I have no desire to play this game, I've moved on, it's time to go, the Fallout 76 community is incredibly devoted to the game. That's why you see profit being made on these in-game microtransactions. A lot of people are appalled by them. A lot of players do not care, and they are willing to pay a subscription fee. They're willing to put money back into the game to buy smaller little bundles. They're willing to do all of that because this is probably one of the only games they play. And they like it like that. And so for it to come to Steam certainly opens up the player base a lot. It opens up the potential for more people to give it a shot, especially as the Steam summer sale does roll around in a couple of months. You will start to see more people get online. And if they can implement this Wastelanders update, it could be a very, very much needed second wind for the game itself that could bring in a lot of new players. But on top of that, it could cater to the old players as well. But Fallout 76 coming to Steam in April, and you love to see it because who likes launching a game through like 18 different launchers at this point? But speaking of launchers, guess what's coming to Xbox Game Pass on PC? Ooh, and console. Final Fantasy 15 and Wolfenstein Youngblood are both coming to Xbox Game Pass. The first titles for Game Pass users in February have been announced, and there are a couple of big ones in there. Microsoft will add 3 new titles to Game Pass this month, starting with Final Fantasy 15 and Wolfenstein Youngblood. Both 15 and Wolfenstein Youngblood will arrive on the service on February the 6th. That's tomorrow for those watching the show today. The following week on February the 13th, we'll see the release of co-op puzzler Death Squared, which is playable with up to 4 players. Each player needs to guide a robot to a color-coded goal, but the path contains deadly traps and hazards. You can complete the main campaign with 1 or 2 players, then take a group into 4-player party mode. At the end of January, A Plague Tale Innocence, Indivisible, and Sea Salt were added to the service, if you did want to dive in and give those a look. Now, I will say Death Squared is on consoles. There is another game that is coming to PC. It slips my mind, but you can find out everything on the official Xbox Game Pass Twitter accounts. There's one for PC and there's one for console if you did want to stay up to date. Now, of course, how are these games? Wolfenstein Youngblood generally got between a 6 and a 7 out of 10. It's very co-op heavy, and it seems to be lacking in a lot of ways. A lot of people, including myself, believe that the original Wolfenstein reboot, really good. Wolfenstein 2, okay. Wolfenstein Youngblood, you start to lose me there. But nonetheless, Wolfenstein, a good experience when it comes to killing Nazis in the alternate reality world where the Nazis did win World War II. So you love to see it. You love to do it. But man, just not the best with Youngblood. But hey, with Game Pass, maybe you and a friend have it and you can both dive in on PC or console, which is very cool. On top of that, Final Fantasy 15, very highly regarded game. People enjoy that one. So hey, why not? But of course, more games are going to be added to the service throughout February, and I stand behind my statement. Game Pass is the best deal in gaming, especially if you're on one of those free trials where you can get like 3 months for $1. That's nuts. You can play a lot of games if you invest the time. However, to round out today's show, Harley Quinn is smashing her way into Fortnite. It's a not-so-subtle Birds of Prey plug. Batman and Catwoman won't be the only DC characters to have made a Fortnite appearance. Sleuth Lucas7 Yoshi has discovered that Harley Quinn will soon be available to buy in the item shop as part of the larger 11.5 update. Not surprisingly, it's a plug for the imminent Birds of Prey movie. You can play as Harley in her guises from both the new movie and Suicide Squad, complete with a baseball bat or a mallet in place of the usual pickaxe. There is no sign of the classic Jester outfit or the rest of the Birds of Prey crew, but it might do the trick if the movie has you eager for some Harley-themed mayhem. There is more on tap. Epic appears to be introducing a Valentine's Day event, Love and War, that will include challenges as well as free cosmetics like the Crushed and X skins. You should also see the return of launch pads, and Unreal Engine's Chaos Physics engine will add more realistic behavior as well as, of course, more realistic gameplay in general. But these additions are really a last hurrah for the current season before Chapter 2 Season 2 begins on February the 20th. Sorry, starting to slur here. Just going in and out of consciousness. But don't get too attached to the way things are right now then. Although many of the goodies are likely to carry over, Fortnite is poised to change again in the near future. I don't know what they mean by that. Although many of the goodies are likely to carry over, you act like a new season is going to revolutionize the game. If you buy something in the item shop, you're good. Like, it's going to be there. Epic is really good about that. Regardless, I'm not a Fortnite player, but if you did want to dive in and play as this in your game of Fortnite, then by all means, you totally can. Again, standing behind my statement as made at the beginning of the show, 12-year-old boys, oh man, this is just going to be all over their TVs. Mom's going to walk in, get all confused. What are you watching? I can't explain. Regardless, if you did want to get this Good Night bat along with these little monster shirts and short shorts and tattoos for the Harley Quinn skin, by all means, you can. And you can get your mother even more angry than she was during the Super Bowl halftime show. It's true. But that rounds out today's episode of the Jampack Report. If you enjoyed this one, drop me a like down below. And of course, be sure to subscribe and stay up to date on the hottest gaming news of the day, because the show is hosted every single weekday night. And of course, you can find it on YouTube and podcast services around the world. So I'll see you tomorrow. You guys have a good one. Until then, peace.